All right, teammates. We are back once again. If this is your first time listening to the Move Swiftly podcast, welcome to the number one show on innovative teamwork. Great to have you. To my regular listeners, you already know what goes down when you hit the play button on this show. Whatever you may be going through, whatever challenges you may be having, whatever difficult times you may be going through at this current moment, we are here to indirectly tell you you are not going through it alone. People have been there. We've done that. This show has had amazing guests, whether it's just myself as a solo episode doing solo episodes, or if it's people that have come on. We have every single time, every single day, it's been about teaching you that you're not going through the rough times on your own. Today, I have the founder of a company named Glass Arts Collective, Miss Nancy Dillingham Marks, who I cannot wait to get into this conversation with, because she has already called herself a bit of a nut. And for you regular listeners, you already know we love crazy people on the show. That's exactly what we're all about, for what it is we do. You know, you got to be crazy to believe that what you have in your heart, what you have in your soul is going to actually work out and create something strong. So all that being said, Nancy, welcome to the show.
Aswan, thank you so much. I'm excited to be here.
Excited to have you. And the thing is, I saved this story for when we started recording, because I wanted to make sure it was a organic conversation, an organic reaction from you. But I teach at the school named the Center for Creative Education. And the way
Oh,
there it is. You see, this is why I waited, folks, because the way it works, it's out here in West Palm Beach, Florida. And the way it works is we use arts to infuse that, to teach students the math, the science, the social studies, and we're always integrating it. So we would have a teaching artist come in for about an hour a day, and they would come up with a project, and they work with us teachers to come up with an art project that's aligning with a math lesson, aligning with the science lesson, aligning with the social studies lesson. So for example, there was one who came in, and they had the kids draw like pollution in the ocean, and that was a lesson on social studies, because we're teaching the kids about, if they were running the government, what policies they would put to keep pollution out of it. So there's so many of those. And
wow.
when it comes to your company, and I actually remember doing some glass art myself when I was a kid, I'm just really excited to dive deeper into how you built it, what it's all about, because I was listening to you before, and I realized it wasn't something that just woke up and said, okay, Glass Arts Collective. was a There was a great deal of work. It's almost like you started a second or third life when it comes to this. So, before we get too deep into the company that you built currently, let's kind of just go back to your background a little bit, and how you grew up, and what you kind of started as a career, and then eventually we'll definitely have to dive deeper into the business you're in now.
I I was very blessed. I had an amazing childhood. My parents were very open to exposing us to as many things as they could.
Yes.
We grew up in communities that were education related because my dad was a college professor. And so we got to be exposed to so many things.
Mhm.
I spent third grade in Israel. My dad was on a sabbatical,
Oh man.
and we traveled for a month through Europe on the way over
Mm.
and a month on the way back. And so as a second grader going on third grade and third grade starting to go into fourth grade, I was exposed to so many things. I spoke fluent Hebrew, and came back and had to learn French. So I was learning my third language at the age of 8.
That's
And I
amazing.
know in Europe that's very normal. It's not as normal here.
Yeah, right.
And when the word I was asked to say something, automatically came out in Hebrew because that's about all I was speaking for a year.
Right.
Nobody wants to listen to a kid who's, third grader
Mm.
in English. And so it was a lot of fun. And it really opened my eyes to being a little different
Mhm.
and not
What was
judging
that like,
people.
though? Out of curiosity, because again, like I mentioned, I teach, and
Eh,
one of the things that is difficult though sometimes is to see when kids are not like creatives like you, who are, they have a creative niche to them, and they don't get looked at as normal. They kind of get looked at as how they get like dismissed and stuff like that. Can you kind of describe what those isolated feelings may have been that you had when you were attending school in the US or in the States?
It was actually a great school. I mean, I had a music program we were in,
Mm.
um, but I was hurt that the teacher didn't understand that was a third language I was learning,
Mm.
and didn't really support that. And
Yep.
I wish she'd had. And it is a lot of years later, and I still have that feeling very strongly that I had wished she had understood what was I was going through.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that that's a hard thing for teachers to do, especially nowadays, because there is so much going on. So when teachers are able to step back a little bit and say, okay, there's some reason for this.
Mm-hmm.
How do I support this person who
Right.
does have something different going on and still be able to maintain everything else?
Yeah.
And I wish that had happened.
Right.
So what one of the things that I do now that I'm teaching
Mm-hmm.
is that when somebody comes in and they have coming from something else,
Mm-hmm.
I try to incorporate it. I try to understand where they're coming from.
Right.
And I learned through my corporate world, which was 35 years, that working with other people, everyone sees and hears things differently.
Yeah.
Some people learn better from reading. Some people learn better from listening. Some people learn better from doing it.
Mm-hmm.
And I truly was somebody who learned better by doing it more than reading or
Right.
um, just listening.
Right.
And so I've always tried to find multiple ways of explaining things.
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing that I learned in my corporate career was that everyone, for the most part, and I know I hate using the word everyone, but the majority of people
Mm-hmm.
all want to look good. They all want to feel like they've got it, they understand it, and what they're being asked to do makes sense.
Right.
And when it doesn't, how do you find a way to have it make sense?
Right.
And we've all been in situations where, oh my gosh, this is just not the most logical way of doing it. So why are we doing it this way?
Right.
And my folks taught me that it's okay to question things.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, the worst thing that somebody can do is say no or too bad, but you have the right to ask.
Mm-hmm.
The important part of that is you have to ask nicely. You do not ask in a sarcastic way or a rude way because people shut down. But if you ask in a nice way, gee, I don't understand this. This doesn't make sense. Could you help me with this?
Mm-hmm.
Most people are so open to having somebody care enough to want to learn it
Right.
and understand it. And that helped my career a lot. It also helped me improve processes and procedures
Right.
in many of the companies I was in.
Yeah, that well, I'm glad you brought that up because that's actually what my next question would the next kind of thing I want to talk to you about because as a current creative, one of the common phrases I'm sure you heard is a starving artist. And you could get people that want to do art for a living or they want to create for a living and all that, but you get the corporate folks, oh, how you make the money, how you make the money, how you make the money. You've been blessed to have experience obviously in both arenas in both fields. So was it the corporate world immediately after school? How did you get into the corporate world? And then what were like you had mentioned, the systems and the processes and things that you picked up then that allowed you to say, okay, I'm able to run a great art studio, to open up my own art studio, but I know how the money's going to come in because of my previous experiences.
Well, a lot of the corporations I worked in with very large. So I worked at IBM, I worked at ABC, I worked at Columbia Pictures, I worked at Toshiba. So I had a lot of big name companies where I was only a small cog
Yeah,
in the program.
yeah, yeah.
But I always tried to understand the bigger picture
Mm-hmm.
because paperwork or whatever it was coming over my desk had been on somebody else's first and was going to somebody else's next.
Mm-hmm.
And so I always wanted to understand those other directions because if it if I did something, if I could do something better that
Mm-hmm.
helped the next person, maybe it was just something as simple as alphabetizing it, or maybe it was as simple as instead of sending it over alphabetized, I sent it over in numeric order.
Yeah.
Simple little things that made the next person's job better or easier.
Mm-hmm.
I was happy to be able to do that.
Right.
So it's kind of looking at the bigger picture. The last company that I worked at was a network infrastructure company that belonged to my husband,
Hmm.
and I was the chief operating officer.
Hmm.
And I learned, because it was a smaller company, I learned everything about just about everything that was in the operations accounting
Hmm.
side of the world. And so I knew how to run a business, and I understood cash flow, and I understood the sales tax and all of the things that were so critical for a business.
Right.
That opening the business, I started as a business owner
Hmm.
before I was really a creative person.
Exactly.
I had the bug for the creative side of it,
Yes.
but I was willing to bring in people who knew the creative side with glass
Hmm.
better than I did to get started.
Yes, and that is so very important for any creative out there that is listening is your art is your masterpiece, your work, and the things you want to do. It's one of the things that I know, me personally being a creative, one of the things that you have to have is you have to be very selfish because you want your art to be sharing and you want to share your art with the world because you believe in it so strongly and so wholeheartedly. However, there is a business component and there are systems that need to be in place in order to give you the platform to share your art. And when you mention these major companies that all of us have heard of, whether it's ABC or IBM, what would you say is the kind of the common thread that all of them have? Now, aside from them, feeling like you kind of just feel like us being a small part of it, when you kind of look at it now and you're running your own show, what would you say were the things that they have in common that made it so they grow when they have systems intact?
One of the things absolutely is they have a name recognition. So
Mm-hmm.
people understand who they
Thank
are.
you. Nothing sells like a name. Nothing sells like a name. I'm telling you.
But at the same time, a negative brand, I
Yeah.
mean, is that's hard to recover from.
Yes.
One of the things that was always important to me when I was doing sales as well was looking for that win-win-win situation. So
Mhm.
I represented the brand I was working for at correctly. I did not oversell what that product could do or misrepresent
Mhm.
anything.
Mhm.
For the customer, I wanted to make sure they understood what their requirements were that I could explain, which was the right product. Because so many times people would see advertising on TV or they'd see advertising through friends, and over the fence, somebody's telling you what kind of firewall to buy.
Mhm.
Uh, but not all of them work the same. And that's a really important thing to remember. Not all of anything. That's why there's so many types of cars out there. There's so many types of everything because they all have different features and functionality.
Yeah.
So I always wanted to make the person I was selling to feel really good that they understood what the product's capabilities were because
Mhm.
they have to explain it to their boss.
Yeah.
And if their boss asks them questions and they have the answers, they feel awesome.
Yeah. It
And
actually, so you're
understanding
making me,
what
it's
the
funny
questions are
because
going to be.
you're making
Yeah.
me think of a time in college, and I have a football background, and we were sitting there watching the games, and there's this Taco Bell commercial that continued to come up, and it was four times the steak, four times the steak, and I mean, we were saying and said it to the point where eventually we all just got in our car and drove to Taco Bell and got the steak, and again, it's not like the four times the steak that you see on TV when you actually go to the Taco Bell and buy it. So that point you make about putting your product out there, advertising and stuff like that. It is an ethical thing that comes with these big companies that you know about versus the store level and stuff like that.
Exactly. And then I had to make sure the company I was working for was
Uh-huh.
going to make money
Yeah.
and that we were not going to have issues and we were not going to have a dissatisfied customer because everything was a win-win-win. Everyone had to be
Mm-hmm.
happy and successful with it. And that was so much easier to do than I ever thought it would be.
Mm-hmm.
That sounds like it's going to be so hard to make it work for everybody, but in my case, I was not a salesperson who went and sold speeds and feeds. Okay, so it can do this many, process this many, whatever. Blah, blah, blah. It was this is what you need, and this is what that software requires, and blah, 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 blah.
Wow.
And helped them to better understand it was going to be the right product. They didn't need this super big server because The software couldn't process fast enough for that. It was a waste of money. Instead, they could get multiples and have backups and redundancy. And so when I came into now move forward to what I'm doing now,
Yeah.
it's really important to me that when my customers come in, I'm teaching techniques
Yeah.
in my classes. And I want them to understand what the techniques are so they understand, for example, how is the glass going to react in the heat?
Mm-hmm.
This temperature versus this temperature. What are the kinds of things to look for? What are the kinds of things to expect?
Mm.
And I have a lot of examples and samples.
Yeah.
And, some of the glass is going to react because of heat and change color.
Yeah.
I can show you what color it's going to be. And
Mm-hmm.
so I have received a lot of compliments on it's a place to have fun. It is absolutely fun experience. But at the same time, I make it fun, but still inform you.
Yeah.
But I also have it verbally and I have it in samples. So
Yeah.
multiple ways for people to absorb the information.
Mm-hmm.
And for those that struggle a little bit, I give them extra time. I
Yeah.
give them a little bit more, attention. I
Yes.
try to find out what their expectations are and help set them. So, and then I opened 5 weeks before COVID hit, so I had a lot of time to play at the studio.
Right. I remember you saying that. And the thing is, I'm really glad that you brought up the whole concept of win-win-win, because as I was doing my research for getting prepared for this, I noticed that it's not just a store. You actually, like you mentioned, you teach classes, you make the art, but you also make it so the creators can sell their art too. It's all in one. So
Yes.
there's a no lose. It's like no lose at all when it comes to people that want to work with you. And I have to ask before we really dive into that, Jake, the store that you have now, what ultimately made you transition there? Where did the passion come from to decide, hey, this is going to be the specific thing in which I kind of plant my flag?
Well, the studio was my first anticipation as I wrote out what I wanted to have for the studio
Mm-hmm.
was a place where people could come and feel a part of something and feel welcomed. And I mean, when I go to a restaurant and the people at the restaurant get to know me, I
Mm-hmm.
like that restaurant better than ever.
Hmm.
And it might not be the best food, but when I'm recognized and greeted and treated well,
Right.
you know what? I go there before I go to some other restaurant.
Man.
And so I wanted the studio to be the same kind of thing. I wanted to recognize people, welcome them back, be excited when they bring a friend, tell them, how much I'm excited to share my passion.
Mm-hmm.
And everyone feels it. Everyone feels my passion while I'm teaching.
Right.
And we have a lot of jokes about the fact that I have bad dad jokes. Um, because glass is all it's cracked up to be,
Right.
and it goes downhill from there.
Was one.
So,
That was good.
and you'd be surprised how I can break the glass ceiling without much trouble.
There we go.
Um,
Yes, you got to
so,
kind of come on. We could just end this like that. We could do a whole show on that.
absolutely. But it started off being a place for people to come.
Mhm.
Because of COVID, it became a sanctuary, and it became a place where people came for peace of mind
Mhm.
and for anxiety at breaking the issues that people were having for on so many levels. And it was small groups of people. We
Mhm.
had everyone separated even more than at a restaurant,
Mhm.
but people could feel the energy of the glass and
Right.
the energy of my enthusiasm. And a community was developed.
Right.
Didn't expect that. Didn't expect to have people who would want to be there more than I ever thought they would be.
Mhm.
So I created this open studio program, and with 3 levels. It started off with just one, but
Mhm.
as people were coming in, the requirements were different.
Right.
So I modified the program because I can do that. Again, trying to find win-win-win. Just because this program was logical at the beginning, this is what's next. I need this as well. I need this
Right.
as well. And so, again, changing programs. So
Mhm.
the top program are the people who come in every month on a regular basis, and they're making a lot of things. And I realized they have no place to sell it. A couple people have Etsy sites, but they have a hard time managing them because they're busy with jobs and other things.
Right.
And I looked at it and I said, these people are supporting me. How can I support them back?
Right.
So I included their art in the gift shop as well. And
Hmm.
I have a new win-win-win.
Yeah.
So my studio is offering more things. The artists have a place to sell their stuff, and customers have a much larger and broader array of techniques and colors and patterns and styles to choose from at one stop,
Right.
one place. And you now have, I think I've got 13 artists in my
Right.
gift shop right now.
So it's amazing to me how similar what you just said is to the way Starbucks got started. Because it wasn't about selling coffee at all. It was about creating an environment where people can have their business meetings and things where entrepreneurs can go to and just serving a group of people. And for you, it was just a feeling. I mean, the fact that you mentioned a restaurant, now I'm thinking about, high-end restaurants must have some great glass art there. They probably put a whole lot of time in terms of making the actual decorations of the place feel great. And then they do the same thing when it comes to the people. And that reinforces a message that I've been talking about on this show for the past 5 years, to where people buy feelings. You have got to make sure you're doing your part to create a feeling for your consumers, for your customers, for your shareholders, whatever it is. Be committed to making sure they're getting an experience that they will not get anywhere else. And when you look at, if anyone just looks at it online, they may just think, hey, it's just art that she's selling, when it's not. You're actually selling an environment. You're actually creating an environment in which young people, whether it's young, old, doesn't matter, you can go in
Right.
and escape. I've done, and I've been one of the people that's been lucky to create a glass mosaic before. And this was back when I was in middle school. It's actually therapeutic. It's fucking, listen, it's therapeutic shit. And I remember actually, because I grew up in Maryland, and I made a snowman with my I made a
Mhm.
and I put it on my window for the longest time, and I had it there. And even though I don't remember getting a great grade on it, but I think the space was, I mean, this was school, so the spaces between the thing was, but it didn't matter. What the point
Right.
I'm making is the feeling that you give people with whatever they're going through. And you can correct me if I'm wrong, but was the fact that you opened during COVID, was that something that turned out to be a blessing? Because I remember during that time, people needed an outlet. They needed a way to just get, because it was pressure. People were losing their jobs. They don't know where their next check is coming from. If they can just do some art or something like that, that was like, that was just it turned out to be a great time for you to open. So
It was, but not a lot of people found me. So
yeah.
it took a while for people to find me. We got recognized by the city of Westlake Village in California
Mm-hmm.
for being the business of the business of the fourth quarter for 2023.
Mm-hmm.
And I was really taken back because that was my first real year of really having doors open
Yeah.
versus, okay, I can open retail right now. Okay, now restaurants are open, so I can open this section.
Mm-hmm.
And so to be recognized, and my response was, I thought I was a hidden gem and you found me. And it's like it was really pretty amazing.
Right.
I think what COVID did for me was really help me change my mindset.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, I've had to do it many times in my career, but I went from being really angry
Yeah.
to realizing that almost my entire life, I've always said, I wish I had more time.
Yeah.
I was a single mom I got a divorce when my daughter was 3, and I was a single mom for many, many years,
Hmm.
working corporate. And so there wasn't as much flexibility as there is today, for moms. And I said, all of a sudden, I have been gifted all of this time.
Yeah.
So how do I take advantage of it? And I worked a lot in my studio.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that I wanted to see the studio be is one of a kind handcrafted gifts
Mm-hmm.
of art, and not trying to mass produce or anything else.
Mm-hmm.
And the people I attracted to the studio are the people who wanted to do one of a kind
Mm-hmm.
handcrafted gifts. And really, businesses, and I know it's said regularly, but it's not necessarily implemented, but the business really does thrive when it's guided from the top down. When
Okay.
that person at the top hires the right people to help carry the message and help the business stay on track by giving the right vision and mission statement and helping people to be successful.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I mean, I always, when I did get to give reviews, I never thought anyone should ever be surprised by the performance review.
Mm-hmm.
There should be throughout the year, if someone's off track a little bit, I want to talk to them and find out what's going on. Why are they off track now? And
Mm-hmm.
just help realign the process. And by the time performance reviews came around, it was like, okay, we got a little off track here, but we're right back on. And in fact, you're excelling.
Yes.
And that was what I used to love, was being able to encourage and help people,
Mm-hmm.
because all kinds of things happen in your personal life and they do carry forward into work. You know, you don't want them to, but and vice versa. But you know, being compassionate
Yes. Yeah. So first
and
of all, I gotta put my son hat on now because
okay,
I gotta tell you, I'm sure your daughter's really proud of you. You know, going through a situation where you're 3 years old and you're understanding things, and you again, you're working this corporate job. You're doing it for your daughter to put clothes on her back and feed her and all that, and then to see you build your dream and do it. I'm sure she's proud of the work you're doing and how you're serving people. And the second point is I have to ask you now, you know, especially being this might be more of a selfish question for me personally, is how do you get out in the community? How do you serve people? How do you get this message out there to young people to know that you exist, that creativity still is incredibly important to establish to young people, because it's not valued in our school system. It's not valued in the
right.
corporate environment. It's not something that people grow up saying, okay, I want to be a glass artist. They say, no, I want to go to this corporate job like you had, work for this company that's reputable and stuff like that. So how do you contend with what's naturally being pushed to our young people?
Well, it was more of a challenge than I had anticipated, because fused glass, people don't know what that means.
Mm-hmm.
And that's my primary. We do stained glass as well, but we don't do glass blowing.
Mm-hmm.
And we were doing mosaics, but there wasn't a lot of people as interested in mosaic. And
Right.
that's okay. Um, I do a lot of uh, fundraisers, and I do auction items.
Mm.
And I make sure that people get to see the brochure as well as the piece of art.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and we do birthday parties. We start at age 7 and up. We do birthday parties. That has got to be one of the best ways that these kids are all learning about it and having so much fun.
Yeah.
Um,
I mean, oh my
you
God,
know,
I
you
can
could,
only imagine a group of 7-year-olds, they're breaking glass and having a ball.
oh yeah, and it's all ages. I
Yeah.
mean, you get adults that come in, and then I even have team building
Yeah.
sessions, because of course, for my corporate world, I know how important that is. So I have team
Yeah.
building sessions,
Oh,
and
okay.
we actually had a bridal shower
Mm.
um, in the studio, because it was the bride meeting the groom's side of the family.
Yeah.
And so they thought it would be fun to do an activity where she didn't feel like she was the center and
Yeah.
making her really uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Had a blast.
Uh-huh.
Um, and so, and then the newest thing that I've added to help again with the community
Mm-hmm.
is that my artists get one day, one week, month, each one gets a month. And sometimes they do it together, but that they're artist of the month. And then
Mm-hmm.
we have an artist reception for them as well. So this past Sunday was one of the artist receptions, and a lot of people came in to support her, and other people came in because of the newsletter and the different places that I marketed it in our local um, area,
Mm-hmm.
came in to see what it was.
Yes.
And they just could look at it and hear the story and get to see stuff without worrying about, would I like this or not?
Mm-hmm.
And the number of people go, oh my God, I want to do this.
Yes, and there you have it. I listen. She said it perfectly in everything she said. The creativity that gets infused in your young people, it's going to lead to ideas. I mean, from bridal showers to the birthday parties to team building activities. I could only imagine a lot of the corporate people that you've worked with. having their staff come in and just do this,
Sorry.
learn this about each other, learn that about each other and how they gel as a team, who has work ethic, who has the grit, so many things that you as an owner would actually learn about your own staff if you just have them do something as simple as that. Who's going to meet the deadline? Who's going to actually get into it and have a project? What can you give them? So much of these creative outlets are available, but you got to make sure you're emphasizing it to people so they know that they're there. Because if they just get bogged down with, I got to make money every day, I got to pay bills every day. Again, I'm not telling you not to do those things. They're very important. However, you don't want that to be the only reason you're waking up. You don't want that to be the only motivation. You don't want that to be the only thing that you have going. You got to get out there, get that outlet so you can find other ways to connect with people. And so, like I said, to open up the show, you're not going through those challenging times alone. It's a rough road. Trust me, it's not going to be pretty.
Yeah, exactly. And it's so fun to watch people work together.
It is. It is.
In a different environment.
Kids do it all
So
the
they're
time.
looking at
Yeah.
like, oh my God, I didn't know you could do that. I didn't know you were that creative. And oh my God, I love the colors you picked. And
Yeah.
everybody starts with their head down, focused on their own stuff. And I said, okay, everybody stop. And they look at me like, why? What is she going to do now? And I said, everybody get up and walk around the table and look at everybody else's stuff. And then go back to your own. And people just look at me like, and they do it. And they're like, oh my God, I had no idea. Oh, I'm so glad you made us look at everybody else's. These are amazing.
I see it.
And that's a great feeling.
I see it every day, especially with the kids, because sometimes they're very rowdy. Obviously, as kids are, they get really animated. And, I have to get high school football coach. We have kind of a love-hate thing. But when it comes to art teachers and, a lot of them will come in and you see them calm down, do the work, whether it's just learning a new song or learning painting, drawing, whatever it is. So much of it is therapeutic to the point where I myself have gotten to the point where I started doing some of the art projects and teachers will walk by and see me like I'm one of the kids. I'm like, man, this is therapeutic for me too, because it is it's one of those things where you're just letting go and you're releasing. So, I do want to be very respectful of your time. Can you just tell people a little bit about what is the goal? What is the plan for, maybe 10, 15 years down the line? What do you envision? Can you just speak on what's next for Glass Arts Collective?
Really working on the gift shop more. Right now, we're only shipping throughout the United States. I would love to go beyond that. I really want to do more videos of what is fused glass and what you can do with it. I love the fact that my various artists that are there really push the envelope of what glass can be done. And I want to show them off more. I really want to help them get into museums and galleries and
absolutely, yes.
So I really want to support them more. At my age, I'm in retirement age. How's that? I don't really need to be doing this. It's a business. Don't get me wrong. I don't take that lightly.
And not only that, but even in that sentence, when you want to support your artist, you still have to make sure the business is running. I appreciate that because I've dealt with several owners and several people that were kind of on that ladder and they've just kind of fucked off everything and forgot about the people that actually work underneath them. So that's a rarity in itself. So don't like kind of, I want to make sure that you listeners don't, that doesn't get brushed off. It is important, even though in retirement age, she doesn't have to be doing it. It's coming from here. It's coming from the heart. And it's coming
it really is.
For the artist.
You are absolutely right. This is such a joy for me and I'm so proud of it. And I'm proud of my daughter. I just have to put that out there.
Yes.
She's grown up to
school now, or
she's down in San Diego and she's been working for the same company for 18 years already. And is a leader within herself. And it is the compassion that I see in her and the desire to make things right and how she tries to help things outside of her job description. She is my daughter all the way.
Yes. And it comes from that creative household. I mean, again, I'm sure there are situations where you had to figure things out. I mean, again, in the world I'm in, there's a lot of single mothers that I get the honor of speaking to every day, and hearing what the day to day, again, it's not one of those things where you could just brush off, or you kind of take a broad stroke and look at what they do. We're talking about moment to how they're going to eat, to how they're going, what clothes they're going to have, and the bill's going to be here. And then it's like, wake up, okay, I got to do the same thing tomorrow, and then the same thing the next day. It's an everyday grind, and so much of that gets overlooked, in my opinion.
Absolutely. And I have so much respect for single moms, single dads, parents who both are working. There's so much going on, and they hold it in so tightly because they don't want to share.
Yeah.
And I love being able to help them have that release, finding something they can do that's a lot of fun.
1000%. And if anyone wants to reach out, what's the best way to get in touch with you?
Glassartscollective.com is my website. It's where my gift shop is. Frequently asked questions. And if you really want to touch base with me, info@glassartscollective.com. I answer anything when people send me notes. I love to help guide and give guidance and support. You don't have to be part of my studio. I support you anyways.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, Nancy, the final thing I do to close out all the shows is I want you to use your imagination a little bit. You are, I guess I will deal with this. Your daughter's 3 years old. You just came back from a long, long 9 to 5 day. You have to cook dinner for her. I know 3-year-olds are incredibly energetic, so she's running around full of energy. You're back there. Pretend that version of Nancy has come into the Zoom room. Give her some words of encouragement, and we will officially close.
Oh my goodness. So I always taught my daughter from a very young age, when I come home, I get 15 minutes to change out of being the businesswoman to being mom.
Yes.
And she would give me that 15 minutes, and then we would play, and we would have so much fun. Yes. And we would cook together, and we would read together. And I turned off the businesswoman and got to be mom. And I didn't care what it was business-wise. I don't care how hectic it was. I left that in the closet. And that was the most wonderful thing. And she appreciated it. And she knew that I needed that little bit of time just to decompress.
I have absolutely nothing to add to that. I mean, very, very rarely on this show am I at a loss for words, but you actually, I mean, that I just pictured it myself, and how, because I know how the corporate world works, that 15-minute stretch, and thinking about how a kid takes in that information, and then you see what you've built now. You see the success that you two have had together as a unit now. It's amazing how those little things each day can create such a big result if you're consistent with it. So, kudos to you. And I personally look forward to keeping up with your work. I've got to figure out a way to connect you with the school in some way, shape, form, or fashion. There's a ton of artists that I'd love to introduce you to, but we'll touch base on that after the recording and all that. So
that sounds great.
Fellow
I'd love that.
Continue to move swiftly. We will talk more soon.
Yes.